Have you ever heard of money that brings more trouble than happiness? In today's video, we are going to share 3 spooky stories about people who got rich but found out their money was cursed. Instead of bringing them good luck, it brought danger, fear, and even terrible misfortune. These true stories will make you think twice about wanting to be rich. So sit back, relax, and get ready for some scary tales of cursed money that will leave you wondering if some fortunes are just too dangerous. Thank you for watching Craving Fear. We need your support to continue delivering stories and improve. If you haven't yet, like this video and subscribe for more content. When I got the call from the law firm, I wasn't expecting anything special. The voice on the other end told me I had to attend a will reading for an estranged uncle, someone I barely knew. I only saw him a few times at family gatherings, and he never seemed like the friendly type. To be honest, I didn't even remember his name until the lawyer said it. As I drove to the office, memories of the few awkward encounters I had with my uncle flickered in my mind. He was distant, always with a smirk on his face, like he knew something no one else did. I never paid much attention to him because, well, he wasn't a big part of my life. Now, out of nowhere, I was being called to hear his will. When I arrived at the lawyer's office, the room was packed. There were people everywhere, some familiar faces, some strangers. Everyone was quiet, waiting for the lawyer to speak. I could sense a tension in the air, like nobody really wanted to be there. And when the lawyer started reading the will, I realized why. My uncle had been filthy rich, but it turned out he was also hated by almost everyone in that room. He'd done shady business deals, tricked people, and left behind a trail of anger and broken promises. I could see the anger on people's faces as the lawyer explained how much my uncle had hurt them. But what came next made my heart stop. He left everything to me. I inherited $2 million, a mansion, and a ton of stocks and shares. The room went dead silent. Then the whispers started. I could feel their eyes on me, filled with disbelief and rage. I didn't want this. I didn't even know the guy. Why would he leave all of this to me? It felt like some kind of sick joke. The tension grew so thick that the lawyers had to call security to keep the crowd from turning into a mob. I stumbled out of the office, my mind spinning. It didn't feel real, but it was. Just like that, I had become rich. At first, it seemed like a dream come true. The mansion was enormous, more rooms than I could count. Fancy furniture, a huge backyard. I had money to spend, and my new life seemed like everything I had ever wanted. But soon things started to change, and not for the better. It started with letters. Lots of them. People claiming to be my uncle's illegitimate children started showing up, demanding money. Some wanted compensation for what my uncle had done to them. Others said they deserved part of the inheritance. Then there were the threats. Letters arrived every day from people who said my uncle had ruined their lives. They wanted revenge, and they didn't care if I was just his nephew. They wanted me to pay for what he had done. Soon I couldn't leave my house without someone waiting outside, glaring at me, shouting at me to give them what they thought they deserved. It got so bad that I started staying inside, locking all the doors and shutting the curtains. But even inside, I didn't feel safe. The mansion, the money, it all felt cursed. Every time I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I had lost so much weight, my eyes sunken from sleepless nights. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and I was always on edge. The stress was eating me alive, and the constant threats were driving me crazy. My uncle's enemies weren't just after him anymore. They were after me. I couldn't take it anymore. The mansion, the money, everything. It felt like a curse, like my uncle was punishing me from beyond the grave for some reason I didn't understand. I didn't want any part of it. I just wanted my old life back. The next day I called the lawyers and signed everything away. I didn't care about the money or the mansion anymore. I just wanted to be free. Once I returned to my simple life, everything started to feel normal again. I could sleep, eat, and breathe without fear. I realized that being rich wasn't worth the nightmare I had been living. It wasn't worth the ghosts of my uncle's past haunting me every night. I don't know why my uncle left everything to me. Maybe he wanted to play one last trick. Maybe he knew his enemies would come for me. Or maybe he was just trying to ruin my life the way he had ruined so many others. But in the end, I walked away. I chose my peace of mind over his cursed fortune. And now, for the first time in months, I feel free. One day, I went for a walk in the woods, like I always do. It was a quiet, peaceful place where I could think. But that day, something strange happened. As I was walking, I saw a bag lying under a bush. At first, I thought someone had forgotten it, but when I opened it, my heart skipped a beat. Inside the bag was money, lots of it, a few 100,000 easy. I looked around, but no one was there. It felt like a dream, like some kind of miracle had happened to me. I took the bag home, my mind racing. What was I supposed to do with all this money? A part of me knew it wasn't right to keep it, but another part thought, who's going to miss it? So I started spending. I bought new clothes, gadgets, everything I'd ever wanted but could never afford. For a few weeks, I was on top of the world. It felt like my life had finally changed for the better. But then, one night while I was watching TV, something made my heart drop. The news was on, and they were talking about an old man who had been robbed at the bank. Thieves had stolen a bag full of his life savings, the exact amount I had found. The old man was crying, begging for help, saying it was all the money he had ever saved. My stomach twisted into knots. It had to be the same money. I couldn't believe it. I thought about returning the money. I really did. But then fear kicked in. What if the police thought I was involved in the robbery? What if they arrested me? I couldn't go to jail for something I didn't do. So I kept quiet and held on to the money, but now it didn't feel so good. Every time I spent $1, guilt weighed heavier on me. A few weeks later, I decided to go on a fancy vacation to forget about everything. But while I was there, something terrible happened. I broke my leg in a freak accident and had to have surgery. I was stuck in bed for months, unable to do anything. It felt like the universe was punishing me. The guilt from keeping the money grew stronger with every passing day. When I finally recovered, I used the rest of the money to buy a house. I thought maybe I could start fresh, get a new beginning. But just when I thought things were getting better, disaster struck again. One day, while I was at work, I got a call that made my heart sink. My house had caught fire, and it was completely destroyed. The fire investigator couldn't figure out how it started. It was as if the flames had appeared out of nowhere. I knew then that the money wasn't a blessing. It was cursed. I couldn't take it anymore. The guilt, the bad luck, the fear, it was all too much. I knew what I had to do. I cashed the insurance money from the house and tracked down the old man who had been robbed. One night, when no one was around, I went to his house and left the money on his doorstep. I didn't leave a note or anything. I just wanted to be free of the curse. After that, things started to feel normal again. I could finally sleep at night without feeling like something terrible was about to happen. I realized that keeping that money had brought nothing but misery into my life. It wasn't meant for me. I had been tested, and in the end, I made the right choice. I learned a lesson the hard way. Not all money is good money. Sometimes what seems like a blessing is really a curse in disguise. Growing up, I always heard stories about my grandfather. He came to this country with nothing and worked hard to build a life for himself and his family. My parents were proud of him. He was strict, they said, but that's just how people were back then. I didn't remember much about him. He died when I was little, and the few memories I had were of a quiet, stern man who didn't speak much. One day, I decided to clean the attic of our house, my parents' house, the house we inherited from my grandfather. While going through old boxes, I came across a dusty old wooden box that must have belonged to him. Inside were things from his past, old clothes, medals, and trinkets. I was about to put everything away when I found a small, worn-out diary at the bottom of the box. I was curious, so I started reading. As I turned the pages, my heart began to race. The diary was my grandfather's confession, his darkest secrets. I couldn't believe what I was reading. He wasn't just a hard worker who built his life from nothing. He had been a guard at a Nazi concentration camp. He had participated in the horrors of the Holocaust. He wrote about how, when the war ended, he escaped the country, bringing stolen possessions with him, gold teeth, jewelry, money taken from the prisoners. He had used that to build the life he was so proud of. But the worst part wasn't just the stealing. It was the way he wrote about it, as if he was proud of what he did. There was no guilt, no shame, just pride. He even wrote about hating his Jewish neighbor and wishing him harm. I felt sick to my stomach. How could the man my family looked up to be this monster? My hands were shaking and I wanted to stop reading, but I couldn't. The more I read, the more I felt my world falling apart. After reading the diary, I couldn't look at the house the same way anymore. Every room, every piece of furniture seemed tainted. It was all bought with blood money. I started having nightmares. In my dreams, I was trapped in a dark, cold place, surrounded by the ghosts of people my grandfather had wronged. They didn't speak, but I could feel their anger. They knew what my grandfather had done, and it felt like they were coming for me. During the day, I couldn't escape the feeling that the house itself was haunted by the weight of my grandfather's sins. The air felt heavy, and I couldn't relax. I would hear creaks and groans at night, and though I knew it was probably just the house settling, it felt like something more. It felt like the past was alive in this place, like it was watching me. I started distancing myself from my family. I couldn't look at my parents without thinking about how much they loved and admired a man who had done such terrible things. But I couldn't tell them the truth. I couldn't destroy their image of him, the man they thought he was. They still lived in that house, and they had no idea what was hidden in the attic. After a few months of living in that house, I knew I couldn't stay any longer. The guilt, the nightmares, and the weight of the truth were too much. I had to get out. But how could I explain why I was leaving? I didn't want my parents to know the real reason. They would never forgive me if I told them. They wouldn't be able to handle the truth about their father. So I made up excuses, saying I needed to live closer to work, or that I just wanted a change. Moving out was the only way I could escape. As soon as I left, the nightmares started to fade, and the heavy feeling in my chest began to lift. But even though I was gone, the memories of what I had discovered stayed with me. I couldn't forget what I had read in that diary, and I couldn't shake the feeling that my family's entire life had been built on something dark and evil. I know now that sometimes the past can haunt you in ways you never expect. My grandfather's sins were buried for years, but once I uncovered them, they changed everything. Now, I carry the burden of that truth alone, hoping that one day I'll find a way to come to terms with it. But for now, all I can do is try to live my life differently, far away from the shadows of my family's past. Hope you like these stories. Which one do you like the most? Tell us in the comments below. If you have interesting stories, send them in an email at the address listed in the video description. We'd love to hear them, and I'll make it into a video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.